Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
Alright, hello YouTube, how's it going? What's up? My name is Lee, welcome to my channel, thedastardLeebatman. I went to go see Borderlands in theaters. Better late than never with this review, I guess, right? Right? Anyway, I'll be back to let you know what I thought of this movie after I play this clip.
What's that?
What? I'm expelling the excess lead. Oh, big bullet coming. Oh, there we go.
You do this another time.
This has to happen now. Don't judge me.
Keep it down. We don't want to. So you asked for it, Tannis.
Borderlands.
Okay, so that was a clip from Borderlands, and I do want to say that clip is actually edited a little bit differently from the way they edited a few things out. It does flow a little better in the movie, but I also want to add that if you watch that clip that I just had in my review and you did not enjoy what you just saw, then you're not going to like this movie. And I'll be real, I didn't fucking like this either. And let me take my headphones off, sorry. I gotta remember to do that. I'll just go ahead and be straight up. I'm not a big fan of the games. You know, in 2006, I was busy playing stuff like Gears of War and Dead Rising. That was like my jam, especially Dead Rising and Gears of War. You know, that's what I was playing mostly. And I played Borderlands a little bit here and there. I've dabbled. I've tried all of the games except for the pre-sequel. I don't really enjoy them very much, to be real. You know, maybe if I sat down and played them with my friends, I would enjoy it. It feels like it'd be more fun with as a communal experience. And maybe I would have enjoyed this movie more if I saw it with my friends instead of going by myself. My uncle did come with me because he was off work, and he's like, yeah, let's go see a movie. And I used a free movie ticket to cover him, and I, of course, have Regal Unlimited. And luckily, I've seen enough movies this month that I basically got to see this for free. Thank God, because even watching this for free and using my Regal Unlimited and that free movie ticket, even then, I still felt like even then I still felt ripped off. And that's because this movie's freaking awful. It is just atrocious. And before I really get into that, let me actually tell you guys who is involved in this movie. And let me tell you, the cast of this movie, I'm just shocked that they're even in this. Not because they're miscast or anything like some of the fans have been saying. You know, to be real, watching this, I will say before I read this cast, I gotta say, watching this, I feel very grateful that everyone in this movie took the hit to be in it, because if they were not in this, holy crap, I actually think I legitimately would have walked out, because this cast is doing let me just read them, alright? So, it stars Cate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Edgar Ramirez, Jamie Lee Curtis, Ariana Greenblatt, Florian Munteanu, Janina Gavankar, Jack Black, and it also features Gina Gershon, very briefly features Haley Bennett and Bobby Lee. Okay, very briefly, those two are in it. And Gina Gershon is also pretty brief as well. And it is directed by Eli Roth. I'm going to put that in quotations because it sort of seems like it might be directed by him. We'll get into this. And it has a screenplay by Eli Roth and Joe Crombie, and also not credited here as a writer is Craig Mazin, and we'll get into that as well. So this movie's a hot mess, and I'm just going to go ahead and read some trivia here from IMDb because I think it kind of condenses, it leaves out a lot of details, but I think it kind of condenses the issues that this movie has faced, okay? The movie was shot in the summer of 2021, and Eli Roth's first director's cut was reportedly finished in early 2022. However, it was shelved for over 2 years due to extreme studio interference while the film was in post-production. Appalled by the film's extreme violence, the studio wanted the film to be marketed as a blockbuster and hired Tim Miller to do extensive reshoots on the project. These reshoots ended up comprising so much of the final movie that Steve Jablonsky had to write an entirely new musical score, as the original score by Nathan Barr no longer fit the film. That is insane. This movie is produced by Avi Arad, by the way, a notorious producer. Sometimes he's got some hits, sometimes not so much. If you want some background information on Avi Arad, he is the guy who notoriously shoehorned Venom into Spider-Man 3 and kind of fucked that movie up. Now, I do really like Spider-Man 3. I still think that movie's really, really good, even though it's got some flaws. He's that guy, okay? He's the guy who's like, I don't care if this is right, I want it. We need to make money. And by the way, watching this movie, you can tell that it was rated R at some point. And to be real with you, when this was first announced and when I first heard that Eli Roth was going to be the director of it, I gotta say, I felt, even though like my knowledge of the games is actually like pretty solid considering I haven't played them that much, mainly because my friends really, really like them. I've never sat down to play them with my friends. Maybe I'll do that later this year or next year sometime, maybe, especially since I'm streaming video games now. But here's the thing, okay? When Eli Roth was announced, I thought, like, that's kind of weird to get him to do, like, a big blockbuster movie like this, right? But then I thought about it, and I was like, okay, well, what's the source material like? And the source material is very immature and, violent and bloody and stuff. And when you look at Eli Roth's filmography, he's got a lot of immature sensibilities, and they're very violent and insane. They're like, honestly, like, when I was a teenager, his movies were like, I was like, oh, these are like so awesome, right? I used to love Hostel and stuff like that. I still think Hostel Part 2 is pretty good, though, to be honest. And I recently, last year, watched Thanksgiving by him, and I thought that was actually really, really good. I had so much fun watching that movie. I think he's actually currently shooting a sequel. Kind of can't wait. And I've seen some people lay the sole blame for this movie being so bad at Eli Roth's feet. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he did do extensive rewrites on the script, so much so that Craig Mazin, who currently is the showrunner of the Last of Us TV show, was like, I want you to take my name off of the script. They screened the movie for him at some point, and he was like, I want my name off the script. But this movie, I think the sole person to blame for this is probably Avi Arad and maybe like a couple other producers as well as the studio. Because you watch this and you're like, this is so formless, so artless, that I'm like, there's no way Eli Roth is the sole person to blame for this. I have a feeling whatever his director's cut was probably just okay. One of those movies that you probably would sit down and you'd watch and be like, oh, that was pretty good. It'd probably even get like some kind of cult following or something going along with it. And then somewhere along the line, they messed it up and made this trash heap that we have currently. And I gotta be honest with you, there's like zero redeeming features in this movie. The only thing in this movie that really got me through it really was the cast. For a couple different, for various different reasons too, by the way. So let's talk about Cate Blanchett first of all, okay? Genuinely bizarre to see her in this. And she does have voiceover in this movie, but if you look at her voiceover in this movie and you compare it to what she did in like Lord of the Rings, for example, she sounds fucking bored. And I would not be shocked if this is like one of those like post-production, like, hey, call her back real quick so that she can do some voice work. It's very similar to like what Harrison Ford did for the theatrical release of Blade Runner. The theatrical release of Blade Runner is notorious for, I'm saying notorious a lot in this review, but is notorious for having like really boring, stupid narration from Harrison Ford where he just sounds just like he would rather put a gun in his mouth and shoot himself, right? Cate Blanchett doesn't exactly have that exact same energy, but it's there. And what's even funnier is her narration is completely pointless. As you're watching the movie, you're like, why are you telling me stuff that I'm literally looking at right now? I don't understand. Like, as a matter of fact, her narration kicks in and she's like, Pandora, real shithole of a planet. It's terrible here. And I'm like, yeah, but you just had a scene literally moments before this narration kicked in. I'm talking like not even a minute that's established that she hates Pandora and Pandora's a shithole and she doesn't want to go there. So why are you giving me narration that establishes that? And I'm going to be real with you. This movie is only like an hour and 40 something minutes, and it felt so much longer. As a matter of fact, the theater was completely empty when me and my uncle went. It's just me and him. And we went to like a late night showing and stuff. There was a moment, I'm not proud to admit this because I genuinely thought like maybe I should just tell my uncle, like, let's get out of here, and I'm not even going to review this, right? And I'm already reviewing this late, so I don't even know if this is worth me talking about or whatever. I feel like everyone's already moved on. But I just want to say something here, okay? I literally glanced down at the back of a chair at a moment in this movie. And by the time my eyes moved back up to the screen, I realized, oh my God, I just looked at the back of that chair for like about 10 minutes. That is not good at all. So let's actually talk about some stuff that I liked in the movie. So like I said, I liked Cate Blanchett. I really did. I thought she was awesome. You know, even though like there's times when you can tell that she's trying desperately to grasp onto something tangible here with this character. She tries her best. And I gotta say, she looks really cool in the film. She's hot as hell in it. I've seen a lot of people online talk about how she, like, ever since she got cast, talk about how she's miscast and blah, blah, blah. I gotta be real with you. You got one of the best actors in the entire world in your goofy, silly video game movie. Maybe show a little bit of respect. Like, for example, I just said I'm a big fan of Gears of War, okay? If they cast Daniel Day-Lewis as Marcus Phoenix in that game adaptation, two things. Number one, yeah, I actually probably would say that he's miscast, okay? But also, number two, I'd be extremely interested to see what in the hell that movie is, because Daniel Day-Lewis is one of the best actors of all time, and him being in a Gears of War movie, like, it's just as baffling as this. It's just as baffling as when you look back at, like, that original Super Mario Brothers movie, and you're like, wow, how the hell is Dennis Hopper and Bob Hoskins in this? How did they convince these dudes to do this? And I think the answer really is that the script that they read is so vastly different than what the movie ends up being. Cate Blanchett, I'm pretty sure, I think they hired Eli Roth before she was cast, okay? And Eli Roth did work with her in The House with the Clock on Its Walls or whatever. It was a pretty solid movie. Not like the best thing ever, but pretty decent, okay? And Jack Black's in that as well. I have a feeling she was like, oh yeah, I'll come in here. It's like COVID. I don't really have much to do. You know, she's even talked about that. Like, you know, she didn't really have much to do. I think she saw her kids playing the game, you know, while she was in lockdown during COVID, I think. And she was like, oh, you know what? They're making this movie. Let me read the script. Oh, my friend Eli Roth is directing it as well. Or at least, maybe not even friends. Maybe she's just like, oh, Eli Roth is doing this. I did a movie with him. He's like a pretty solid, you know, I had a fun time doing that. So I'll sign on to this. She probably read the script and then was like, oh yeah, I'll be in this. That's fine. And then it turns out to be absolute dog shit. And even funnier, the production of this movie is so long that, like, she literally, this is hilarious to me. So the movie Tar, a movie that I love so much, I have a poster of it in my room. I snagged it while I was working at Regal the year it came out. She was nominated for an Oscar for that movie. Her and Jamie Lee Curtis were nominated in the same year for two different movies. Okay, here's how long the production of this movie was. While they were doing reshoots of this movie, her and Jamie Lee Curtis hear that they were nominated for Oscars for Tar and Everything Everywhere All at Once, while they're back doing reshoots for this movie. That is insane. They shot this entire movie and then came back to doing like reshoots for it after they'd already filmed other movies. Like whole other movies got shot during this. Hilariously, you read about this movie, and one of the reasons why I think you can't even blame Eli Roth, and by the way, I wouldn't blame Tim Miller for this either. He is a producer on this, but I wouldn't even blame him for this. It sounds like he was dealing with a very difficult studio environment. Eli Roth would not come back to do the reshoots for this movie, probably because they told him to make it PG-13, and he wanted it to be rated R. Understandably so. The games are very much rated M. Shot all of Thanksgiving, and that movie came out. Eli Roth shot an entirely new movie, like wrote, directed, cast, all that shit, and released it, and that came out November last year. This is coming out in August, the second, like the third, like the back third of the year, 2024. This is almost a full year after Thanksgiving came out. That doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense. Same thing can be said of Cate Blanchett and Jamie Lee Curtis. They both shot like Tar and Everything Everywhere All at Once. They shot those movies and then got the phone call to come back while they were shooting them and stuff, or preparing to shoot them. Cate Blanchett's talked about how she did she was practicing her composing stuff for Tar on the set of Borderlands. By the way, anyone who worked on the set of this, if you have footage of that, please post it online. I would love to see that. That would be pretty funny to see in her like Lilith costume doing the Tar stuff. That'd be pretty awesome. That's a better movie in and of itself right here. Let's talk about some of the other cast here. So I don't think anyone should take a hit for this movie. I really don't. The only person who should take a hit for this is probably Avi Arad. Kevin Hart's in this. Now, he's no stranger to being in bad movies, okay? And by the way, I'm not blaming him for being in bad movies. I do like Kevin Hart, okay? He's also been in plenty of good stuff. But one thing you can say about Kevin Hart when he's in these movies, even if he's just being Kevin Hart, he has a personality. And he at least like will make you chuckle here and there. He has nothing in this film. Nothing. I can't even remember anything he said in the movie. That's insane to me. That's insane that I can't even remember anything Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart? He doesn't even like yell it. He doesn't even do anything. He's just, you know, and I know like people are like, oh, he's miscast as Roland because he's so short and stuff and blah, blah, blah. And Roland's supposed to be this like elite badass soldier guy. Once again, I do feel like you could have done something with Kevin Hart as Roland to, you know, win people over. He could have had a really cool action sequence. He could have been like kind of funny. And speaking of that, when it comes to video game adaptations, I don't mind them doing like new original stories with even like already established characters. I don't mind them changing things like that. With video games are so, you know, different than how like movies, any other form of like, you know, entertainment works, right? Because it's interactive. And a lot of times, so something with Borderlands already is tough to like crack as far as adapting goes because it's so specific to the medium that it's in, okay? That making a movie or anything outside of a video game for Borderlands is tough as shit to do because it's so specific to that form of media that it's in. Genuinely does not work as anything else. This movie I think is proof of that. I think no matter what version we got of this movie, I think it would not have been that good. You know, maybe it would have been better than this, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I'm contradicting myself a little bit while I'm talking about this. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. I'm just baffled here. I'm just baffled. I can't really talk too much about the movie. I will say this, all right? I can tell when I was watching it, the action scenes at some point were at least like good. But you watch the movie and you're like, yeah, these are like neutered. Like you can tell they're cutting like real quickly away from stuff or whatever so that they don't get any blood at all. Like every single fight scene in this movie is completely bloodless. And this is a movie where people are shot constantly. There's explosions going off constantly. It's insane. And I want to go ahead and give you guys an example of just how scatterbrained this movie is. There's a character in this movie, and this happens near the end, and I'm just going to have a spoiler here. I don't think any of you will care. So this is Janina Gavinkar's character, okay? Nox. She plays Nox, all right? This is a character who, like, is like a foil in a lot of ways to the main characters throughout the movie, okay? She's trying to find them, hunt them down. She works for Atlas, okay? Now, they hint at times that Kevin Hart and her have, like, history together, okay? But they never, ever, they don't even really share any scenes together until near the end of the movie. Okay, and something happens where she makes a big decision and is like, I don't want you guys to, you know, hold your fire, soldiers, don't shoot these guys. And she's turns to Kevin Hart and starts talking and she's, you know, starting to like explain things a little bit. And right at that moment, I realized just how much this movie was messed with in production, because that's a character who was nothing throughout the entire movie. She's nothing. She's just there to like be like, get them, right? That's what she's there to do. And then all of a sudden she has this big moment at the end of the movie, and I'm realizing to myself, oh, this was like an actual like character that had like actual like character beats. She was written, okay? She had like, you know, stuff going on, all right? And as soon as I start having that realization, she's literally blasted off the screen in a moment that's so just baffling. I was like, I had like whiplash. I was like having this like realization that like, oh wow, they really messed with this movie. Immediately I was like, oh yeah, now I don't care anymore. Yeah, this is awful. And by the way, people have mentioned how there's a can of Axe body spray in this movie. That's how much they didn't care about it, right? They quote unquote didn't care about this movie. And they say it's a mistake. They say it disappears. But I was watching the movie and I was looking at that can of Axe body spray. It actually doesn't go anywhere. Okay, they just never focus on it again. I have a feeling that there was a joke, because there's a lot of jokes about smell in this movie. And I have a feeling that there was a joke about Axe body spray in this movie that they cut entirely, but they couldn't cut the Axe body spray sitting there, right? That's just another example of how messed up this movie is. I don't know what the rated R cut of this looked like. I don't know how much was changed. I gotta tell you though, this definitely was much better at some point. It reminds me a lot of Morbius. when I was watching that movie, and you could tell that like there was like complete scenes just taken out of that movie where you're like, why would you cut this? I don't understand. This seems pretty important to just regular ass like any movie would have this. I'll never forget watching Morbius and they cut out, you don't even see the villain become the villain. Anyway, I'm getting off beat here. This has been me just like kind of confused and baffled by what happened here, because this should have been way better. This should have actually been something. You had like a decent cast with like Oscar nominated and now Oscar winning actors. Kate Blanchett won before, but this should have been at least like a moderate success. And instead it's just this hodgepodge awful mess that didn't even, I don't even think it made $10 million in its opening weekend. That's insane. A movie with this cast based on a property as popular as Borderlands didn't even make $10 million opening weekend. That's crazy. And after seeing it, I can see why. Because fuck, man, this is bad. It's not the worst movie I've seen this year. The worst movie I've seen this year definitely is still The Strangers Chapter 1. That movie is so god fucking awful that, you know, it makes any movie look better by comparison. And even in that movie, I did find a few tiny things to enjoy. And just like in this one, I found some tiny things to enjoy. I did like Kate Blanchett. I did think Jamie Lee Curtis was given a good performance as well. You know, she actually was like a real character. Everything else, though, is like awful. Just atrocious. It looks like dog shit, too. Like, I feel like there's a lot of special effects that aren't finished. And as long as this movie's been cooking, you know, behind the scenes and stuff, you would think at least the special effects would be finished. But there's stuff in this that looks like first draft, like, if that, you know? And another thing with this movie that's also, that even shows how, like, scatterbrained and crazy the production was, Kate Blanchett, you know, she's an older actress. She's like around the same age as Gina Gershon and Jamie Lee Curtis. And there's stuff where like Gina Gershon and Jamie Lee Curtis were like friends with Kate Blanchett's mom in the movie, like before events or whatever and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, your mom, she'd be so proud of you and blah, blah, blah. And there's even like a scene where Jamie Lee Curtis says it, where Kate Blanchett says to Jamie Lee Curtis, you were supposed to take care of me. And hearing Kate Blanchett say that to Jamie Lee Curtis is the weirdest fucking thing I think I've ever seen in a movie. Wow, that's just so odd to me. And even in that scene is so funny the way it's shot, because like Jamie Lee Curtis enters the door and they're doing like a reference to and it's a reference to The Graduate. It's like shot through like Kate Blanchett's knee, and like, yeah, don't get me wrong, I appreciate that because Kate Blanchett's sexy as hell in this movie, but it's also weird. Right? Why is this a reference to The Graduate? There's no reason for that. So anyway, let me just go ahead and rate it. I know this has just been me really kind of, this isn't really a review, it's just me kind of being more baffled about what's going on with this thing. But this is easily one of the worst blockbusters I've ever seen. From now on, whenever I see a movie that's considered a blockbuster, this is the level, this is the threshold. As long as it's better than this, it's getting at least 2 stars. You know what I mean? Whenever I get this review up, I believe it's going to be followed after the Crow remake that I think might actually end up being worse than this somehow. So we'll see. We'll see which one ends up being the worst movie of the summer. If it's going to be this or if it's going to be The Crow. I have a feeling I'm really going to hate that Crow movie. But we'll see if it's worse than this. Anyway, so my star rating for Borderlands is going to be 1.5 stars out of 5. This is absolutely not worth watching ever. Skip this, please. If you have to see anything from this movie, literally only watch the scenes with Kate Blanchett and admire how cool and hot she is in this movie. Because she is cool and hot in this movie. And I gotta say, while I was watching it, I kept thinking to myself, it'd be cool if she was in like an action movie that was actually good. Like, I felt depressed when I was watching this. I was like, wow, this is the most artless piece of crap that I've seen. If it wasn't for The Strangers Chapter 1, I think this would like I said earlier, if it wasn't for The Strangers Chapter 1, this would be the worst movie I've seen this year. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. You know, lots more reviews coming your way, some more gameplay videos, hopefully. Anyway, hope you'll have a good night. Peace.